You're welcome to the online class on educational research. Today we'll be looking at types of research, but we'll focus on qualitative, quantitative, and mixed method research approach. I am Dr. Caroline Ochukwalodia, University of Delta Agbo, Nigeria. So what are the learning objectives for this lesson? I'll be able to identify the types of research, differentiate between qualitative, quantitative, and mixed method research, identify characteristics of each research type, explain when to use each research design, compare strengths and limitations, apply appropriate research types to educational problems. So let's look at the types of research. Let's list them out. Triangulation research, mixed method research, qualitative research, quantitative research. We also have basic research, applied research, and action research. So for this lesson, we'll be looking at qualitative research, quantitative research, and the mixed method research. So let's start with qualitative research. Qualitative research describes phenomena using words and not numbers like we usually use. Scores of students, 60, 40, ages of students, 15, 16, 17. But in qualitative research, we use words to describe phenomena. That is a very marked difference. Then we explore experiences. We want to look at the experiences of individuals, their perceptions, what the meaning they give to issues or a particular event. What meaning did they make out of it in their own way? What do they think about it? Qualitative research, because of the nature of qualitative research, the sample size is usually small. There are qualitative research that you can just use only one individual. Yes, you can use up to 40, but it's not, you can't use 100, 200. That would be too much because of the nature of qualitative research. Because the data you get from qualitative research is massive. So when we talk of data, in most cases, what comes into our mind is numbers. The ways we get from qualitative research is also referred to as data. And the type of sampling techniques usually used in qualitative research is a non-probability sampling technique. And the most popular one among the non-probability sampling techniques that is used is the purposive sample. The approach is usually subjective, inductive, subjective, and inductive. Common design that we use in qualitative research are case study, narrative, ethnography, phenomenology. Let me try to differentiate between this design. Sometimes I hear people say qualitative design. No. It's qualitative research. It's an approach. But there are designs that can be used under this approach. So quantitative research is an approach. Mixed method research is an approach. Triangulation research, they are all approaches, but there are designs for each of them that suits each of them. So for qualitative research approach, the designs that are commonly used are case study, narrative, ethnographic, and phenomenology. So each of that is more than this. They are more than this, but these are the most common ones that you will come across. Now, let's take some example, like the role of teacher-student relationship. The role of teacher-student relationships in motivating at-risk learner, a phenomenological study. This one, this is one. Another one, teachers' perceptions of differentiated instruction in inclusive classroom, a case study. It's not compulsory that you will put a case study at the end, a phenomenological study at the end. Look at this other one. The lived experience of students with learning disability in mainstream class. So from the word, the lived experience, if you really want to get the experiences those students they pass through, it's not giving them questionnaire to tick. They need to express themselves and say it exactly the way they feel. So that leads to qualitative study. So you have the teacher's attitude towards AI-based learning tools, a qualitative exploration, the challenges of implementing anti-bullying policies in secondary school stakeholders' perspectives, faculty perceptions on academic integrity in the age of ChatGPT, the impact of mentorship on women in STEM graduate program, a narrative study, the role of storytelling in language development among preschoolers. So these are some examples. So what are the characteristics? I've mentioned some of qualitative research. It describes phenomena using words instead of numerical values. It is based on social constructivism perspective. It is interested in finding out the why and how of decision making, how people feel, why they make certain choices. Some common qualitative research design, I think I've mentioned this. Yes, narrative research, ethnographical research, case study, even historical research design, they are all under qualitative research approach. The method used in collecting qualitative research data are usually true observation, document analysis, focus group discussion, and individual interviews. The sample size is typically small, and respondents are selected to fulfill a given quota. It is subjective, but it's holistic. It's holistic, it's in-depth, and it follows an inductive approach to research. Now let's look at the advantages and disadvantages. What are the advantages? It provides an in-depth examination of phenomena. It is useful in building new theories. It is relevant at the early stage of research because it can help the researcher determine what to study or focus on. It yields verbal information, which can sometimes be converted to numerical form. So it's a very rich approach, and it gives you detailed information concerning phenomena. And you can use it to really develop theory, because to develop theory is not, it's more about finding exactly how people feel, how the issues is really on ground, what people think about it. And that will help you to determine, the theory line you are going to take and what you are going to use to develop the justification for developing the theory. So what are the limitations? It is time consuming because the method used in collecting data takes a long period. For example, you want to interview 20 people. You need to visit them and you interview them. Not just you record. Later, you are going to transcribe and write it down. Then before you begin to read, it takes a lot of time. It gives a large data. Maybe you interview 20 people and each of them took 2 to 3 hours. You can imagine the large data you have. By the time you transcribe it, you'll be using a lot of papers, in writing them down before you will now go and code. And it also faces the challenges of applying statistical method. It's difficult to apply statistical method. Another thing is that findings from qualitative research cannot be generalized to the population. Let me explain this. For example, you are carrying out a study, and the study is, you're looking at a phenomena that has to do with secondary school students. And you decided that you are going to use secondary school students in a Delta state. But because it's a qualitative research, you may not be able to interview all the secondary school students in Delta state. You can say, okay, I will interview one student in each of the local government area. You're using purposive sampling, whatever non-probability sampling you may want to use. And when you are finished with that, you come up with your findings, what you discover. When we say it cannot be generalized, you cannot say because what you got from this number of students, you cannot use it that it's likely that all the secondary school students in Delta State may also have the same opinion. So you cannot generalize it. The major reason why you cannot generalize it, the sample is small. It is not easy to make a comparison between variables, that is true, because it's not quantitative. It is difficult to control for researchers' bias because the researcher is usually present in data gathering, hence it may affect or influence the subject response. Because the researcher is there, the subjects, then the participants may respond in a way just to combat flag. Another thing is that the researcher may be biased and would only pay attention to the things he thinks about that phenomenon. Another thing is that it is sometimes not properly understood and accepted by researchers. In the scientific field, they feel that qualitative research is not a research, but that is not true. Yes, in the social sciences, humanities, education is accepted. And now recently, even in the medical field, they carry out an interview, with their patients, those who have used a particular drugs. So even now, they are beginning to realize that it is a type of research, that all research cannot end up with numbers, with figures. It is hard to establish external validity. Now, quantitative research, we are done with qualitative. Quantitative research generates numerical data. It uses statistical analysis, like t-tests, correlation, regression, structural equation model, pattern analysis, latent class analysis, and so on. You can test hypotheses and theories. It requires a large sample size. It's objective, and it follows objective and deductive approaches. Okay, look at some example. Does gamified learning improve standardized test scores? A Quizzer experimental study. The link between extracurricular participation and GPA, a large-scale survey analysis. Another one is there. Does mindfulness training reduce classroom disruptions? A cluster randomized trial. So what are the benefits? What are the limitations? It allows generalization to the given population. If you will remember, in qualitative approach, we said it does not allow generalization. Yes, yeah, it does. Let's go back to the example. Look at this. The link between extracurricular participations and GPA, a large-scale survey. For example, you want to carry out this study using university students in Delta State, or let me say in Oyo State. You want to carry out this study in Oyo State. Now, the first thing you do is to identify all not just the university, you want to use university polytechnics and colleges of education. You identify all of them. They form the population of this study. Then from this population, you cannot pick everybody in this study, even though it's a large-scale survey. You can decide that you want to use 1,000 students, 2,000 students. Then you determine how many will come from secondary school, how many will come from polytechnics, how many will come from colleges of education. Then based on that, you now select your students. And you have a sample of maybe 2,000 students. You go on with your study, and at the end, you will come out with some findings. We are saying because you did a very good sample, and you use the probability sampling techniques, that those findings can be generalized to the population. Remember your population, all tertiary institutions in Oyo State. You can generalize it. One, the sample size is large. Two, you use probability sampling technique in determining your sample size. So that is the meaning of or it allows generalization to the general population. It allows comparison since it can be conducted using several groups. Like the example I gave, you can compare polytechnics with universities, university with college of education. You can even compare a faculty basis. You can compare public and private tertiary institution. It allows comparison. Unlike qualitative, comparison is somehow cumbersome. It permits gathering of data from a large sample. It provides numerical data that can be statistically analyzed. What are the limitations? It is difficult to recognize new phenomena because you have restricted them to either a questionnaire or you just want to pick score. There are some hidden phenomena that are coming up. If around that study, you will not be able to pick it. But unlike qualitative, the process of you interviewing the individual, some questions will now come up. Some of the things the person will say will make you to now ask some questions and will expose areas you never thought were existing concerning that issue. But in quantitative, it's difficult to recognize new phenomena. The information from quantitative research is not as in-depth as that of qualitative research. Interpretation of analyzed data is limited, except there is a control group. The difference between qualitative and quantitative. Qualitative uses words, is in-depth. It answers the question why, how. Why quantitative leads to numbers, data, breadth, is broad. It answers the question what, when. Another key difference is that qualitative is inductive, quantitative is deductive. Another one is qualitative uses small sample, qualitative uses small sample, while quantitative can use large sample. So let's look at the last one we take today, mixed method research. It combines qualitative and quantitative approaches. It uses them. It provides a broad understanding, and you can do it either sequential or simultaneously. Let me explain that. When we say sequential, you can decide to use qualitative. After you have gotten the data for qualitative, you now go on to use quantitative. Or you can decide to use quantitative. When you are finished with it, you now use quantitative. That is sequential. But simultaneous is that you carry out data collection for qualitative and quantitative at the same time. For example, if you are using a mixed questionnaire where you have structured question where they need to say tick, strongly agree, disagree, yes or no, then under it you have questions that they will need to express. What do you think about this? And you make a provision for them to write. So you can see that one they are writing is a qualitative approach, and the one they are taking is a quantitative approach. And you see, you are carrying it out at the same time. That is simultaneous data collection. These triangulations findings from this mixed research makes the findings to be valid. So you have some examples there. Evaluating the effectiveness of teacher training programs in Delta State, a sequential explanatory study. That is good. When you're talking of a mixed method, it has its own design. So some of the design, I mentioned them here. The sequential explanatory is one of the design, a convergent parallel design. You also have embedded design. You have triangulation mixed design. You also have sequential exploratory design. So there are different designs that can be used when you are using a mixed method. So many times people do not put in that design. You will hear them, they will be saying survey, I will use survey interview. It's a design that captures those things, and that's what you will say you use. Now let's take this first one. Evaluating the effectiveness of teacher training program in Delta State, a sequential exploratory study. Research is qualitative. We are going to use qualitative and quantitative. The qualitative, we are going to have a pre-test and post-test score. For qualitative, there will be interviews for teachers concerning the training. Look at another example. Teachers' motivation and student performance in rural Delta school, a convergent parallel mixed method study. For the quantitative, we are going to do correlation analysis, but for the qualitative, it's going to be focus group with teachers. So examining the causes of mass failure in WAEC exams in Delta State. You know, the quantitative is analysis of past exam results. What's the qualitative aspect? We want to get narratives, interview both the student and teachers, what they feel may have caused the mass failure in Delta State. Then you have, the other ones are there, the impact of parental literacy on people's numerical skills in Delta State. Then you have the barriers to e-learning adoption in Delta State public schools. So you can see that we have what we call qualitative, quantitative. We are looking at the approaches. Qualitative, quantitative. When you are doing research, this is sequential. You do qualitative before you do quantitative. I explained that before. Or you do quantitative before qualitative. Then you have the triangulation approach. This is concurrent. With strong data, you use the two at the same time. Then initial qualitative exploration. This one, you take qualitative exploration to explain it, then before you now go on to integrate it into the mainstream of the study. Then the parallel data collection, the both of them concurrent, you use them at the same time. So when to use mixed method? When problems require numbers and narrative to explain unexpected quantitative findings after carrying out a quantitative study, and you got an unexpected finding, then you cannot go on to carry qualitative study to find out what must have caused, resulted why to that findings. For program and policy evaluation, yes, if you actually want to evaluate policies or programs, there's need for you to do a mixed method research so that you can, it will be robust enough to triangulate and to validate results to be sure that that result you have gotten is correct. When studying complex social issues, then you need to carry out mixed research. Carrying out only quantitative or only qualitative research approach, using it is not enough. You need to go on to use mixed method. So mixed method research, what are the advantages? It provides comprehensive understanding with detailed qualitative insight. It enhances practical applicability through broad population pattern analysis. It strengthens theoretical value with convergent evidence from diverse sources, because you are going to sources from both qualitative and quantitative approach. Contributes to theoretical value by examining relationship in larger sample. You have opportunity to use larger sample. Even within the larger sample, you cannot pick the small sample for the qualitative study. Now, what are the challenges in mixed research? Balancing assumptions is crucial for research validity. Please, I need to make a correction here. Challenges in mixed research approach, not design, please. Balancing assumptions is crucial for research validity. It helps to integrate data analysis expertise. It requires deep expertise for effective data collection, because you must be very good in qualitative research and quantitative research. From observation, it's difficult to get somebody who is good in both. It's difficult to get somebody who is good in both. So, and like I said, concerning this first one, how do you now balance assumptions? Because you are using two approaches. How do you balance it to be able to use the mixed method? which one should be heavier. So that is why sometimes in the designs under MIS method, we use plus minus. There's a way we use our arrow and our plus sign to show that this study, you have more of quantitative than qualitative. Then that means that the assumptions, the assumptions and the theories will be used will inch more on the quantitative. That is more in the study. Is time consuming? That is true. Requires a lot of planning and the ability to manage it. Researcher bias is an issue because once you have qualitative research approach, researcher bias is usually an issue and must be properly taken care of. So, lesson evaluation. Define qualitative research. List three characteristics of qualitative research. State two differences between qualitative and quantitative research. When should MIS method be used? Give one example of each research type. You should be able to provide answers to this question. If not, there is need for you to go back and go through the video again so that you'll be able to answer this question. You must continue to watch this video until you are able to give answers to this question. Give a like to the video. Thank you.